They say Lusaka never really sleeps. It's a city that serves as a whirlwind of dreams, a place buzzing with people trying to make their mark. You can see the flash of chitenge skirts as women walk by, smell the roasted maize from the vendor on the corner, and hear the nonstop honking of minibus taxis. Stories unfold here every single day. But no story has ever stuck with the people of this city quite like the one about Mwansa, the millionaire lady, and a quiet man everyone thought had nothing. It's a story that taught everyone that real wealth isn't something you can count, and that love can show up in the most unexpected places. Here in Lusaka, Mwansa had it all. A business that everyone envied, a mansion overlooking the city. Her name opened doors. But she was missing the one thing her money couldn't buy. A love that saw her, not her bank account. She was about to meet a man who had absolutely nothing, or so she thought. What no one knew was that this man, sitting on a dusty street corner, was hiding a secret that would turn Mwansa's world upside down and show everyone what it really means to be rich. Every morning, the city of Lusaka would witness the same elegant procession. Mwansa's deep blue Mercedes, polished to a mirror shine, would glide through the bustling morning traffic like a silent, graceful shark navigating a chaotic sea. Onlookers would pause their hustle, their eyes following the vehicle with a mixture of awe, envy, and pure curiosity. There she goes, they'd murmur, the millionaire lady. She was more than just a person. She was a symbol, a living embodiment of success in a city teeming with ambition. Her attire was always a testament to her status and her heritage, a stunning fusion of modern power dressing and traditional Zambian artistry. The intricate patterns of her chitenge suits told stories, and the handcrafted copper and bead necklaces that adorned her neck were not just jewelry, but statements of her identity and strength. She was a picture of perfect, unassailable success, a queen in her mobile throne, yet the polished windows of her car reflected a world she could see but never truly touch. Inside her corporate empire, Mwansa was a force of nature, a brilliant strategist in a world dominated by men who often underestimated her at their own peril. She would command boardrooms with a quiet, unshakable confidence, her sharp intellect cutting through financial reports and complex negotiations with ease. Her voice, though calm, carried an authority that left no room for doubt. Men who had been in business for decades would find themselves silenced by her incisive questions and flawless logic. She built her company from the ground up, fueled by a relentless drive and an unmatched understanding of her industry. But this very success forged the bars of her gilded cage. Her colleagues and partners respected her, even feared her, but they saw her as a machine for generating profit, a mind to be leveraged, not a heart to be known. After a triumphant meeting, the handshakes were firm but cold, the congratulations formal and distant, leaving her feeling like the most isolated person in the room. Her personal life was a carefully curated performance, a calendar filled with charity galas, exclusive parties, and high society events where she was always a guest of honor. She would move through these lavish gatherings with practiced grace, her smile a beautiful, impenetrable mask. The men who approached her were all cut from the same cloth, their eyes gleaming with an ambition that had nothing to do with love. They complimented her success, praised her business acumen, and appraised her mansion as if it were the ultimate prize. Not once did a single suitor lean in and ask about the dreams she held when she was a little girl, or what brought a genuine smile to her face. Their flattery was a constant, hollow echo in the vast, empty rooms of her heart, reminding her that to them, she was not a woman to be loved, but a dynasty to be acquired. In the quiet solitude of the night, after the last guest had departed and the mask of the millionaire lady was finally set aside, the true Mwansa would emerge. She would stand on the grand balcony of her mansion, overlooking the glittering expanse of Lusaka below, a city of 1,000,000 souls where she felt entirely alone. The silence of her opulent home was deafening, a stark contrast to the noise of her public life. It was in these moments that the heavy weight on her shoulders became almost unbearable. It was a weight of expectations, the burden of her empire, and the profound, aching loneliness that had become her most constant companion. Her eyes, which sparkled with intelligence in the boardroom, would fill with a deep, quiet sorrow. She had everything a person could ever want. Yet she yearned for the one simple thing her fortune could not procure, a human connection that was real, untainted by the gloss of her wealth. Ultimately, Her immense fortune had transformed from a powerful tool into an insurmountable barrier. It was a golden wall that kept everyone at a distance, attracting only those who wished to scale it for their own gain, while intimidating anyone who might have seen her for who she truly was. She found herself reminiscing about a simpler time, a time before the millions, when a shared joke or a simple kindness felt more valuable than any business deal. She was living in a paradox, surrounded by limitless luxury, but starved of genuine warmth and affection. Mwansa was desperate for an escape, for something authentic to break through the pristine, sterile bubble her success had created. She was the wealthiest woman in the city, but she felt spiritually bankrupt, a realization that was about to change the entire trajectory of her life. And then, as if summoned by her unspoken yearning, Mutale appeared. He materialized one day near the sprawling, chaotic city market, choosing for himself a humble throne on a low brick wall, shaded by the sprawling branches of a jacaranda tree. He was a figure of profound stillness in a world of constant motion. The air around him was thick with the scent of ripe mangoes and grill meat, the noise a symphony of vendors hawking their wares and customers haggling over prices. Yet, Mutale remained apart from it all, an island of calm in a turbulent river of humanity. His clothes were undeniably worn, the fabric thin by time and patched with mismatched pieces, and his face was often smudged with the dust of the city streets. But there was an unmistakable dignity in his posture, a quiet pride in the way he held himself that defied his circumstances. He was a silent observer, his presence as natural and unobtrusive as the settling dust. The world, in its relentless hurry, had already passed judgment on him, to the river of people that flowed past his spot each day. He was invisible, another unfortunate soul swallowed by the city's unforgiving pace. They saw the frayed edges of his trousers and the weariness in his frame, and looked away, their discomfort a shield against a reality they preferred to ignore. A mother would steer her child to the other side of the path. A businessman in a crisp suit would cast a disdainful glance, and a group of young men might share a laugh at his expense. He was categorized and dismissed as a beggar, yet he never asked for a single kwacha. He never bothered a soul, never called out, never made himself a nuisance. This refusal to fit their preconceived notions was, in itself, a quiet rebellion. He was simply there, a constant, silent question mark against the city's loud, declarative statements. While others saw only a homeless man, one could only wonder what the world looked like from his perspective. From his vantage point on the brick wall, he had an unobstructed view of the grand theater of Lusaka life. It is easy to imagine he was not just sitting, but studying. He would witness the small, fleeting acts of kindness, a shared smile, a helping hand offered to an elder, and the subtle moments of cruelty that went unnoticed by most. His calm was not the result of emptiness, but perhaps of a deep and profound understanding. He watched the chaos swirl around him with gentle, discerning look in his eyes, as if he were cataloging the very soul of the city. He was a philosopher on a brick wall, seeking a truth that couldn't be found in boardrooms or bank vaults, a truth hidden in the everyday interactions of ordinary people. It wasn't a single, dramatic moment when Mwansa first noticed him. It was a slow, dawning awareness. Day after day, as her car navigated the congested streets near the market, her eyes would be drawn to a still figure under the jacaranda tree. While the rest of the world blurred into a backdrop of noise and color, he stood out in his profound quietness. What caught her attention was the stark contrast between his impoverished appearance and the rich dignity of his spirit. She saw the gentle way he would crumble a piece of bread for the stray dogs that approached him without fear, a small act of generosity from a man who had nothing. In a city where everyone was clamoring to be seen and heard, his serene invisibility was the most captivating thing she had ever witnessed. Mwansa, more than anyone, was uniquely equipped to see the man behind the rags. Her life was a masterclass in facades and pretense. She navigated a world where every smile was calculated and every word had a hidden agenda. She had become an unwilling expert in detecting insincerity. When she looked at Mutale, she saw its complete and total absence. There was no act, no angle, no hidden desire for personal gain. What others misinterpreted as the emptiness of poverty, she recognized as a form of profound wealth, a freedom from the very things that had imprisoned her. He possessed an integrity that could not be bought, a peace that her millions could never provide. in his quiet stillness, she didn't see a problem to be solved or a person to be pitied. She saw a mystery she was desperately compelled to understand. One blistering hot afternoon, when the sun beat down on the city with an unforgiving intensity, the impossible happened. Mwansa's gleaming blue Mercedes, a familiar symbol of her distant and untouchable world, did something it had never done before. It pulled over, its tires crunching on the gravel right by the edge of the bustling market. An immediate hush fell over the nearby stalls. The rhythm of commerce paused as every eye turned to the luxury vehicle. Whispers erupted instantly, spreading from one vendor to the next like a spark through dry grass. What could the millionaire lady possibly want here? The crowd watched mesmerized as the driver opened her door. Mwansa emerged not with the brisk stride of a CEO, but with a quiet deliberation, holding 2 containers of food. She walked directly toward Mutale, who looked up at her not with surprise, but with a calm look of faint recognition, as if he had been expecting her all along. The moment that followed sent a wave of shock through the assembled onlookers. Mwansa gracefully handed one container of steaming food to Mutale, keeping the other for herself. Then, in an act that defied all social logic and expectation, she gathered her expensive chitenge dress and sat down on the dusty, low brick wall right next to him. There they were, the city's richest woman and a man who appeared to be its poorest citizen, sitting together in the dappled shade of the jacaranda tree, about to share a simple meal of nshima and beans. The scene was so surreal, so utterly out of place, that it felt like a dream. The barrier between their 2 worlds, a barrier everyone thought was solid and insurmountable, had just dissolved into dust. For a few moments, a profound silence hung in the air, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city. At first, their interaction was marked by a comfortable quiet. The shared act of eating seemed to be enough, a simple communion that required no words. The aroma of the food, a staple for millions of Zambians, was a great equalizer, bridging the gap between her silk dress and his ragged trousers. But then, hesitantly at first, they began to speak. Their conversation wasn't about mergers or stock portfolios. He might have asked her about her day, not as a CEO, but as a person. She, in turn, might have asked him about the book he was often seen with. And then, a sound no one in her high society circle had ever truly heard escape her lips, a laugh. It wasn't the polite, controlled chuckle she used at fundraisers. It was a real, deep, joyful laugh that sprang for her soul, a sound of pure, unadulterated happiness that made her eyes light up in a way no business deal ever had. This single, extraordinary event soon blossomed into a daily ritual, a sacred appointment that became the new anchor of Mwansa's life. Every day, she would find a way to break away from her demanding schedule, the anticipation of their meeting a secret joy that colored her entire day. Her staff at the office noticed a profound change in her demeanor. The icy professionalism began to melt away, replaced by a softer, more approachable warmth. Her smile, once a rare and calculated expression, now appeared frequently and genuinely reached her eyes. She brought him food each day, a simple offering, but what he gave her in return was infinitely more valuable. He gave her the gift of his undivided attention, a space where she could speak without being judged and exist without being appraised. With him, under the shade of their tree, she wasn't the millionaire lady, a title that had come to feel more like a burden than a blessing. She was simply Mwansa, and for the first time in years, she was truly, deeply happy. He wanted nothing from her, not her money, not her connections, not her influence. All he wanted was her company. He listened, truly listened, to her stories, her frustrations, her small, everyday observations. He provided a sanctuary of peace in the relentless storm of her life. This connection was so powerful because it was built not on what either of them had, but on who they were. She had come to him thinking she was performing an act of charity, only to discover that he was the one providing the rescue, saving her from a loneliness so profound she had forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen. Of course, in a city as interconnected and observant as Lusaka, you cannot keep a secret of this magnitude for long. The initial whispers of shock and curiosity soon curdled into something uglier and more judgmental. The story of the millionaire lady and the homeless man became the city's favorite piece of gossip, discussed with a mix of pity and scorn in hair salons, private clubs, and corporate boardrooms. She must be losing her mind, concluded one prominent businesswoman to her circle of friends. It's the pressure getting to her. Others, searching for a more sensational explanation, claimed he must be using some form of juju or black magic. How else could a man like that capture a woman like her? They'd speculate, their words dripping with a venomous blend of envy and contempt. The narrative was set, she was a fool and he was a cunning predator. The sharpest daggers came from those who claimed to be her closest friends, the members of her own elite social circle. Their horror was palpable, a reflection of their own deep-seated prejudices about class and status. One evening, during a dinner at an exclusive restaurant, they staged an intervention. "Mwansa, were you thinking?" One of them snapped, her voice a sharp crack in the refined ambience. "This is a catastrophe for your reputation. He's a beggar, a nobody. He will drag your name, our name, through the mud. Think about your brand, your image." They spoke of her life as if it were a publicly traded company whose stock was plummeting. They could not fathom a connection that wasn't transactional, and her genuine happiness was an anomaly they simply could not compute. Their concern was not for her well-being, but for the stability of the social order she was so carelessly disrupting. The most brutal confrontation, however, came from within her own family. Her brother, a man who had built his own career in the shadow of her success, was apoplectic. He cornered her in the driveway of her mansion, his face a mask of fury. He accused her of shaming their family name, of being recklessly naive and throwing away everything their parents had worked for. "You will end this absurdity now," he commanded, his voice trembling with rage, "or you will be cut off. No more family, no more support. You will be on your own." The ultimatum was a brutal blow, revealing that even her own blood valued her status more than her happiness. When she stood her ground, refusing to abandon the only real connection she had ever known, he spat a final insult and sped away, leaving her alone and shattered. As if on cue, the heavens opened up, and the first great storm of the rainy season descended upon the city. The argument had left Mwansa standing in the open, and she was instantly drenched by the torrential downpour. The rain mirrored the storm in her soul, each cold drop a testament to her profound isolation. She sobbed uncontrollably, her tears indistinguishable from the rain streaming down her face. She was heartbroken, cast out by her friends and disowned by her family, all for daring to find happiness in a place they deemed unworthy. She just stood there, completely exposed and vulnerable, the weight of her choice crashing down on her. In that moment, she had never felt more alone in her entire life, a solitary figure weeping in a world that had turned its back on her. And then, through the curtain of rain, a figure emerged. It was Mutale. He walked directly up to her, his face a portrait of calm concern. He said nothing, for no word were needed. Instead, he did something that spoke volumes. He took off his own thin, worn-out jacket, his only protection against the biting wind and cold rain, and gently wrapped around her trembling shoulders. The gesture was one of pure, selfless sacrifice, a profound act of protection from a man who had nothing to give but his own comfort. He didn't try to fix her problems or offer empty platitudes. He just stood with her in the pouring rain, a silent, unwavering guardian in the midst of her personal storm, proving that true loyalty isn't bought with money, but earned through unconditional kindness. And then, just as the city was growing accustomed to their unlikely pairing, he was gone. One morning, Mwansa arrived at their spot to find the brick wall under the jacaranda tree starkly empty. She told herself he was merely late. But as the hours ticked by and the sun climbed higher in the sky, a cold dread began to creep into her heart. The next day, the wall was empty again. A week crawled by, each day a fresh wave of disappointment and fear. Mutale had vanished without a trace, as suddenly and mysteriously as he had first appeared. Mwansa was a wreck. She continued her daily pilgrimage to the market, her desperate eyes scanning the crowds, searching every face for a flicker of recognition. But he was gone. The vendors could offer no information. He was as much a mystery to them as he was to her. The light that had so recently returned to her eyes was extinguished, leaving behind a familiar, hollow ache. She retreated back into her golden cage, but now it felt less like a cage and more like a tomb. The loneliness she had felt before was a dull throb compared to the sharp, searing pain of his absence. She had tasted genuine connection, and its loss made her previous isolation feel 1,000 times more profound. She walked through the motions of her life, leading board meetings, attending functions, managing her vast fortune. But she was a ghost, her spirit detached from the world around her. The opulent mansion felt colder and emptier than ever before. Each silent room a reminder of the peace and happiness that had been so cruelly snatched away. She was once again the Millionaire Lady, but the title now felt like a cruel joke. Weeks later, a palpable buzz began to ripple through Lusaka's elite business community. A powerful new investment firm, Mwape Holdings, had opened a lavish headquarters downtown. Seemingly overnight, it was led by a mysterious and reclusive CEO whom nobody had seen, a fact that only fueled the rampant speculation. One afternoon, a heavy, cream-colored envelope with an embossed seal arrived at Mwansa's office. It was an invitation to the firm's official launch party. Her first instinct was to throw it away, the thought of another hollow high society event making her physically ill. But the part of her that had built an empire from nothing, the sharp, strategic, survivalist part of her brain, knew she had to go. It was a professional obligation. So she armored herself for the evening, selecting one of her finest chitenge gowns and carefully constructing the cool, impenetrable mask of professionalism she had once worn with ease. The ballroom of the city's most luxurious hotel was overflowing with the most powerful people in the country. The air was thick with expensive perfume, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the low hum of speculation about the enigmatic host. Mwansa moved through the crowd like a phantom, nodding politely, but feeling utterly disconnected from the scene. Then the moment arrived. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room, and a man walked onto the stage. He was impeccably dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit, his posture radiating a quiet confidence. He stepped up to the microphone and began to speak, and at the sound of his calm, strangely familiar voice, a jolt went through Mwansa. The spotlight hit him, illuminating his features for all to see. A collective gasp swept through the room. Mwansa froze, her wine glass nearly slipping from her trembling hand. Her mind struggled to reconcile the image before her. The man on the stage was clean-shaven and wore the trappings of immense wealth, but the kind eyes, the quiet strength, the very essence of his being. It was undeniably, impossibly Mutale. He introduced himself to the stunned audience. "Good evening. My name is Mutale Mwape, CEO of Mwape Holdings." He went on to explain that his family owned one of the country's largest fortunes, and that he had spent the last 6 months living on the streets, disgusted by a world that valued his net worth more than his character. He wanted, he said, to find one person who would see the man, not the money. As he spoke these words, his eyes scanned the crowd and found hers, and in that gaze, she understood everything. He walked off the stage, moving with purpose through the stunned, silent crowd of onlookers, his path closing the distance that had once seemed so vast. He stopped directly in front of her, the chaos of the room fading away until it was only the two of them. He had the same kind eyes that had watched the world from a dusty brick wall, the same quiet strength that had shielded her in a storm. "Mwansa," he said, his voice soft, meant only for her to hear amidst the silent astonishment of the room. "Thank you for seeing me when I appear to have nothing. You shared your food, your time, and your heart, thinking I had nothing to give you in return." Tears streamed down Mwansa's face. Not of sorrow, but of overwhelming shock, profound relief, and pure, unadulterated joy. Their story wasn't over. It was just getting started. They had found each other not by crossing a social class line, but by forging a true, human connection that rendered such lines meaningless. Mwansa and Mutale taught the whole city something that day. They taught everyone that true wealth is found in the heart, and you can never judge people by their clothes or where they sleep at night. Because sometimes, the person who looks like they have nothing is the one who has the most kindness, integrity, and love to give. And that's a kind of wealth no one can ever take away. What do you think is the most important quality in a person? Drop a comment below and let us know. And if the story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of how beautiful people can be.